What tools do you use for mastering? This is a super fun question to answer because I get to talk about all the amazing tools stroke analog gear that I've collected over the years. But I'm going to break this video into two parts, this being the first one, where I'm going to talk firstly about the general types of tools mastering engineers use, and then in the second part I'll show you the exact tools that I have in my studio, the plugins and the hardware that I use every single day. So let's go. So before we get started, I'm just going to say that we're not going to get into the whole digital versus analog debate today. We're just talking about tools, and the important thing is how you use them, and that you can use them to get the sound, the processing, the dynamics, the tone that you want to get. So when I mention any of these, this can either be a digital plugin version or an analog hardware version. It doesn't matter. As long as you can get the sound you want, that's all that matters. EQ, compression, saturation, clipping and limiting. Now, these are the main 5 tools that most engineers will use on a daily basis. There are more, and there are also more analyzation types of tools that can show you the frequency spectrum, loudness, dynamic range and things like that, that can be useful for mastering engineers, especially if they're aiming for a set goal, a set frequency balance or a set loudness and things like that. EQ. This can consist of removing frequencies, adding frequencies. We can either do really narrow boosts or cuts, or more sort of broad tonal shaping, and it also allows us to do mid-side processing, which can help to manipulate the stereo field and give a sense of depth and width to your tracks. Next up, compression. Now, compression is used at the mastering stage, but it's often used in a much more subtle way than at the mixing stage. So we still use it to control dynamics and give a sense of glue to tracks. But sometimes compression or the compressors are also used just for tone. Certain compressors might have a certain sound that you get by just running signals through them. I do this every day with the Unfairchild here. It's got great tone, it adds harmonic content to a signal. So even if I'm not actually compressing stuff, I'll still use it to run stuff through. Next up, saturation, and this is a great tool for thickening tracks by adding harmonic content. Usually this is done with tubes or transformers in the analog realm, or tube and transformer emulations, or tape even in the digital realm. And this again is used fairly subtly at the mastering stage most of the time. We're kind of assuming that we're happy with the mix, the client's happy with the mix, so we don't want to change things too much, but saturation can give a really nice weight to a track and also helps with overall volume. And finally, clipping and limiting. And these two often go hand in hand, using a clipper directly before your final limiter. Clippers are great for just chopping off the peaks of any transients before your limiter, so you can push into your limiter a bit more before it has to start working. This is a great way to get a bit of extra volume, a bit of extra headroom before your limiter, and get a bit of extra volume out of your limiter. So that's the main 5 tools most mastering engineers will use every day on every single master. Of course, there are other things like multi-band compression, stereo width, reverb, delay and all that stuff, but those get used far, far less often. So as with all tools in any trade, make sure you get good quality ones that aren't going to affect your sound in a negative way. And the most important thing is that they fit your workflow and they allow you to do what you need to do to get your tracks sounding great. So stick around for part 2, where I'm going to go through the exact tools that I use every day. I'll show you all the plugins and the analog hardware that I use on every master and talk you through how I use it. And as always, if you've got any questions, leave them in the comments and feel free to get in touch through the website.